Please send, over me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we have to take up a bar and then we'll be done for the day, I think.
I'll leave my Instagram and
Making money.
It's James Kalm, your half-assed reporter, the guy on the bike, and we're going to try to run in here to the Kurimanzutto gallery, and we're going to look at a Julio Galán exhibition. Stay tuned. They say that Julio Galán had a career that spanned from the mid-early 1980s until his untimely death in 2006. And, well, I remember seeing some of his shows here and being very impressed. This is a huge exhibition, and it's about 20 minutes to closing time, so we'll see what we can get. Sempre tre buscare, 1982, oil on canvas. Well, I just came out of the Enzio Cookie show, and I was talking a lot about the Italian Trans-Avantgarde, the kind of the European Neo-Expressionism. This is titled Labirinto Azzurro, 1983, oil on canvas. Okay, so they're saying that Julio's timeline is from 1958 to 2006. So this would be from about the time that he passed away. I was impressed. I think Julio was a very good painter, but also he had a lot of interesting, this would be kind of a surrealistic approach to imagery. Experendo la Elegada, 1983, and this has got a little mirror in there. I guess you would say that Julio would be an exponent of the Trans-Avantgarde, the Mexican version of this. Túnel de los Santos, 1984. It's 57 by 80. And, yeah, I think he brings in a lot of, kind of cultural things. You know, there's a lot of blood. Nino Figuerendo's Muerto, like a little dead figure. Some of the memory Noro, some of the memory paintings that are very popular in Mexico. Tengo mucho miedo. I guess these are all oil on canvas. This is 60 by 78. Oh, I like the way he's kind of scraped into that. This is a long painting. It's out of Roma, 1990, oil on canvas. Okay, so I like the way he's got this divided this diptych, but and he's put a painted frame in there. I think there's also some art historic references that are interesting. I think there's some Frida Kahlo in there. Maybe some Mata. Untitled. Mommy, this is 1984-85. Well, I also like the way he's kind of a tonal painter. In that some artists use huge blocks of highly contrasting straight colors. He's a lot more subtle. And yeah, the imagery is interesting. His figures capture a certain kind of emotional character. And he's got some humor in there. Niños con muchos huevos. Like children with a lot of eggs. Okay, I like this. Kind of riffing on some vernacular advertising. I was talking about his tonal painting, but he also does a lot of transparent glazing, which adds a nice kind of a patina of age. So they're saying that his career basically was centered in New York, Paris, and Monterrey, Mexico, but that there hasn't been a lot of his work exhibited since his untimely death. Untitled, 1987. This is pastel on paper. Well, Julio was quite a competent draftsman, I would say. Okay, we've got a little floor plan in there. That's interesting. A little design for the house. I was going to say also the frames play a big part in a lot of this. Roses in Videos, 1987. It's 47 by 75. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. A wrestler that's kind of evaporating. A weeping rose. It's also saying I'm getting kind of an echo of René Magritte in some of these. Las Decision Equivocada, oil and collage on canvas. Oh, this piece caught my eye. This might be my most favorite piece in the show. Timenti, Sophia. Yeah, so we've got a lot of talking about his kind of riffing on vernacular advertising. We've got some collage things in here. Kind of a reference to European souvenir kitsch art. Looks like he's got some holes that he's burned in here or cut in here. And I like the arrows. These are all kind of leading these images into your eyes. And then, as I said, I like the way that he's glazing these and sort of giving them the patina of age. Oh, I get it. Maybe he has found these paintings and then collaged them in here. El Encantamiento number 3. Oil and acrylic on canvas. It's 1989. Again, I've got an interesting idea. You do your underpainting, and then this thing, this pattern grid over the top kind of breaks up all that. It makes you have to sort of look through the screen to see the image. I wonder what's happening here. You didn't take me into account. It's 51 by 74. I was talking about how the frames make up a big part of the way the paintings are presented. And even when he doesn't have the actual frames on there, he paints frame things on here. Okay, so we've got our eggs, our little bubbles floating around. Got some collage in there. Also, I was going to say that most of these paintings are at least 20 years old, and they look like they're still holding together pretty well. You know, he was very, very good at laying down the paint, the glazes. So this is Pregnant Sophia with Tiziana, 1995, oilcloth and flowers on canvas. This is 82 by 51. Okay, this is the kind of bad boy paintings that I remember him getting a lot of attention for. Got a lot of stuff in here. We've got some, what's that little pipe cleaner animals that he's stuck in there? Imitation flowers. Okay, maybe we have some splatter, spray paint, other things. Okay, so I like the little antique photograph that's been collaged in there, and the flower stem coming out of his mouth as if the kid was playing a trumpet or something. Oh, I got a Darth Vader. I think people like Chris Martin have been influenced a little bit by Julio. We're gonna wrap up looking at this piece. Nina Descendiendo si hace frio o calor, 1985. Oil, pencil, glitter, and collage on canvas. Okay, so, well, he's got a glittery frame on there. We got a giant snow globe. Maybe the closer you are to the equator, the larger the snow domes you need to kind of drift into the fantasy. And we got a watch in there. So we've got some obscene graffiti. And so this is 1985. This would be one of the earlier pieces in the show. And I can see that it's actually, there's a little age on here, which actually kind of helps the general overall patina. Some collage elements. James Kalm reporting on Julio Galán at Kurimanzutto. Viewers, we've moved up a couple of blocks. We're going to run into Luhring Augustine and see part 2 of Julio Galán. Well, it took me a while to get back to Chelsea to capture the second part of our Julio Galán exhibition, but I'm glad I did. this is Nino Kagwama, 1985. Oil and acrylic on canvas, 84 by 57 inches. And, well, we've got some glitter on the frame here. Well, since my visit to the first part of the show that was at Kurimanzutto, I've had a chance to do some Googling on Julio and found out some interesting things. I guess he was from a wealthy family in northern Mexico at a mining town, and I studied art. This is titled Yo No Soy Yo Soy Yo, 1986, oil on canvas, 47 by 47. And I guess at some point he met someone who was working with Andy Warhol, editing Interview magazine, and they encouraged him to come to New York in, I think it was 1986. And, well, he had some shows, and I guess at one point he'd scheduled a show that was canceled and was able to get some Mexican diplomat who worked at the UN to open his office there for the show. I guess they put it up for 2 weeks, kind of a pop-up. Okay, so we've got this kind of a part of a reclining figure that seems to be under some kind of veil. This image appearing in the sky. Again, a very androgynous character. Todo sucede de verdad. And at some point he hooked up with Anita Nose and had shows with her, and I believe that's where I started seeing his work. This is Retrato de Luisa, 1990. Okay, so I just noticed this. We've got some of our geometric forms. We've got a circle. We've got a square. I think this is his version of an eye, maybe the all-seeing eye. More interesting symbolism, kind of all woven into almost like a pre-Raphaelite portrait of a woman. Okay, the other thing that I thought was interesting is that they're talking about Julio as maybe an early example of someone who was kind of androgynous or had a fluidic gender. And it's interesting because, and it says he passed away in, I think, 2006 at the age of 49. And so he was doing a lot of this painting and things before we had a lot of the terms we now have for these kinds of transgender identifications, identities. Los Cómplices, 1987, 74 by 90. And they were also saying that he had an an immense collection of dolls, I guess antique dolls and various other kinds of things that he gathered together and curated. Okay, so the text is nice, except it's upside down. I was also saying, as I said in the first part of the show, that technically Julio was very interesting and was able to kind of create this patina of age on the pieces. There's a lot of glazing and other things he was doing. There's some scraping, crackle, things like that. And I think this end of the show actually has some of his more impressive pieces. Los Siete Climas, 1991. This is 90 by 59. And like I said, also, he was considered to be one of the Latin American or Mexican Trans-Avantgarde painters, the Neo-Expressionists. So they were doing a lot of things, going back and looking at art history and various movements and trends and things, and sort of mixy-matchy various things, pulling out stuff. One of them would be like the frames, because there was a point in early modernism where they kind of said the frames are an old idea that they had to get away from if they wanted to deal with straight painting. But then the frame became a signifier of painting. So I like we've got a little kind of striped paintings with various almost sigil kinds of symbols and things floating around. And then there's it looks like a Bauhaus clock, maybe Danish modern something, contrasted against this kind of tribal figure. Nito Vulcan, 1985, all on canvas. Well, I was talking a little bit about his biography, and well, he was kind of brought into the New York scene and was mixing around with Warhol and his crowd, but he was a very prolific painter, and well, he passed away at the age of 49. This is someone else, 1996, oil on canvas. And I do think Julio has got a very, very good talent for doing portraits and kind of facial representations. Also, we went and saw Enzio Cookie show last week, and they spent a lot of time talking about his symbolism. And I think Julio delves deep into that realm. Well, I would consider this piece the capstone of both exhibitions. This is titled See Ye No, and it's a diptych. It's 120 by 203 inches. If you look in collage on canvas, and while I was actually standing back and looking at this and realizing that, so you've got a diptych here on the left, got a very kind of expressionistic, splashy, bashy, loose painting with a lot of dripping and things. Also, we've got the little prisms, like something you would hang off a chandelier, cut crystal, and yeah, this central figure with a skirt, and around the neck you've got this little baby doll charm in a cage. So that's the left side. The right side, again, is divided, but it's more geometrical, clean. And we've got a little column that sticks out and divides this. And again, we've got the little crystal pieces, but they're very, very controlled in the way they're laid out, with kind of a linear element. Also, you've got this part here with some script text in here. Mi español es no bueno. And I thought maybe one of the most interesting aspects of this is the belts. So, well, in one sense you're using them as a kind of binding, tying things together, wrapping around the circumference. And then there's another kind of a symbolic part of that, which is the whipping, which this part kind of implies with the hands grasping the belts. And I'm wondering what part of the anatomy that belt is coming out of. You can see the hands. Que mi mata si el miro en la imaginación. Anyway, I thought this piece is probably the most impressive piece of the show. So this is 1990. And I wonder if that's a self-portrait. More de Musquiz. Well, I was talking about kind of riffing on various art historical things, and this definitely relates to some of the German romantics. Albert Vulcan, Franz von Stuck, Ricardo Kalos, Ahogaros Antis de Moraris. But also I think there's a reference to some of the late De Chirico. You know, I think Vito Schnabel showed a whole series of horses on the beach paintings, which this kind of relates to. And I guess the Surrealists riffed on all those guys a lot as well. It's like the famous Brooklyn painting called The Island of the Dead. This is, I guess, a beach scene at night with the waves. Kind of reminds me of some time I spent in Punta Arenas, Costa Rica. And this is 50 by 60 inches. We got some pastel drawings. Untitled, 1986, pastel on paper, 25 by 19 inches. Okay, and even though it's a drawing, he's painted a frame on this, some gold metallic paint. Very sensitively painted portrait, and again, some kind of strange symbolism, the tears coming out, running down the sleeve, and then being squirted back into his eye. This is another big painting, La Primera Comunión, Antes y Después, 1987. This is on canvas 102 by 117. Well, also I think he was, in his borrowings from various art movements and time frames and things, he was borrowing a lot from Catholic imagery, especially the extremely ripe South American or Latin American baroque, which kind of took the whole idea of baroque art and pushed it into another realm. Okay, and we've got little, I don't know what those are, family crests, sigils, something on, like little buttons or medals. The plastic gems and other kinds of beads. The blood, Sangre de Cristo. So say this actually might be a reference to one of his dolls. Ojos de Gato, 1992. Collage and pastel on paper laid on wood board. Well, I was talking about Julio is maybe a proto example of some of the questions of identity and gender and all that stuff, and this is actually kind of interesting because it's not only kind of androgynous, but it almost brings in an element of an animal, of a cat. And yeah, the border looks like some kind of Quaker quilt design, something like that, which is a nice and very apropos contrast to the whole kind of transsexual thing. This is untitled 1993. Watercolor and pastel on paper. Again, a very simple, direct kind of portrait, but he's got some nice little modernistic twists in there and his flower. Getting back to his biography, I think that he passed away at the age of 49, and he was on a plane back from having surgery for some kind of brain hemorrhage. He was going back home and died on the flight. So another tragically short artist's career was brought to an end. This is Untitled, 1986. And I guess you would say that maybe he had a career that only lasted about 20, 25 years, but he was able to achieve a lot. And I mean, maybe it's almost like a feat of forecast that he made a lot of these pieces to look antique, so that when, 30 years after he passed away, they would still have this kind of a magic quality. Untitled 1991. This is pastel on paper, 27 by 20. James Kalm reporting on Julio Galán at Kurimanzutto and Luhring Augustine here in Chelsea. You can like this, share, link it up to all your social media sites, talk about it, share it with your friends. And you can leave your thoughts, ideas, comments, criticisms, and reviews below. And we only ask, as we've asked for the 19 years we've been producing the Kalm Report, that you say, thank you, Kate. Thank you.